You were never supposed to come back. That's the first thing my father said when he saw me standing on the porch of the house I grew up in, the house his mother promised would be mine. He didn't say, hello. Not, I'm sorry. Just that. I hadn't planned to come. Honestly, I thought I'd finally trained myself to let go of the past. But grief doesn't respect plans. It doesn't wait for paperwork. And when I heard from a neighbor that the house had been sold, without a word to me, something inside cracked. I drove 6 hours straight. No luggage. No warning. Just me, a half-dead phone, and a knot in my chest that wouldn't let up. When I turned onto the street, I thought maybe I had the wrong house at first. There were string lights in the yard. Voices. Laughter. I parked behind a silver Lexus I didn't recognize, walked up the cracked path I used to ride my bike on, and rang the bell like a stranger. Which, apparently, I was now. The woman who opened the door was smiling. Tall, polished, barefoot with a wine glass in her hand. She froze for half a second when she saw me. Then she recovered like a professional actress would, all smile again. Oh, Amber. We didn't know you were in town. This is my house, I said, too softly. She tilted her head, like she didn't understand. Come in, come in. I didn't move. Where's my dad? I asked. Out back, she said casually. We're having a few friends over. You should come say hi. I stepped inside. The air smelled like citrus and something synthetic. Too clean. Too foreign. Nothing about it felt like home. I walked past people I didn't recognize. They didn't look at me. Nobody asked who I was. I found him by the grill. He looked up, caught my eyes, and blinked like he'd seen a ghost. And maybe, in some way, he had. Amber, he said flatly. You sold the house. He exhaled, slow. It wasn't yours. Grandma left it to me. She said she would, he corrected, not even pretending to soften the blow. Never filed it legally. It stayed in my name. He took a sip of his beer, as if we were discussing bad weather. My hands were shaking. I took care of her. I left school, my job. And we're grateful, he interrupted. But that doesn't entitle you to a house. Are you hearing yourself? You were 23, he said. No savings. No plan. You think she wanted you tied to this place forever? She told me, I said. Every week. This house will be yours one day. She made me promise to keep it alive. He looked past me. Not angry. Not regretful. Just done. It's just property, Amber. You're making this into something it's not. No. I knew what this was. It was betrayal, clean-cut, and signed in ink. It was silence wrapped in a checkbook. And it started long before she died. I turned to go back inside. I had no plan, no words, but my body moved anyway, like maybe if I stood in the old hallway, I could prove something. But even there, it was gone. Her handwriting, once carved into the wall beneath the light switch, had been painted over. For Amber, who keeps the fire. A line she etched into the wood herself one rainy Sunday afternoon. Now? Just blank white. Erased. That was the word. They'd erased me. I walked into the kitchen where she used to make peppermint tea and slice apples just the way I liked them. Gone. The spice rack. The calendar with her neat, cursive handwriting. Replaced with chrome appliances and foam marble counters. You can't just take everything, I whispered. Behind me, I heard her voice, the woman who opened the door. I understand this is difficult, she said. Calm. Too calm. But the house needed new energy. She would have wanted it updated. You didn't know her. She shrugged. Sometimes people don't say everything out loud. She did. You just didn't listen. She smirked, then stepped aside, as if the conversation bored her. You can see yourself out, Amber. I left. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked out the door, down the same path I used to run barefoot on, and sat in my car. I had one voicemail. From my dad. Let's not make this dramatic. Things change. Be reasonable. That was it. That was his whole message. I stared out the windshield, hands gripping the wheel so tight I thought it might snap. He thought I'd walk away. He thought I'd let it go. He thought I was still the daughter who never asked for anything. But this time, he was wrong. And I was about to prove it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my tiny rental with the lights off, trying to convince myself this was salvageable. That I had misunderstood. That I'd wake up to a call saying it was all a mistake. But morning came and nothing changed. 3 days later, I went to the county clerk's office to close out a minor utility account still under Grandma's name. Nothing serious, or so I thought. The woman behind the desk scanned my paperwork, then frowned at the screen. She typed again. Slower this time. Are you Amber Reeves? Yes. Another pause. Her voice dropped a little. This property has already been transferred. I blinked. Transferred. She turned the monitor toward me. There it was, black and white. The house had been sold last month from my father, Orville Reeves, to a Shell LLC based out of Atlanta. Everything inside me went still. Do you know who owns it now? I asked. She hesitated. Technically, no person. It's registered under a holdings firm. Legal, but pretty impersonal. I walked out of that office into the blazing Georgia heat, phone in hand, stomach twisted. Grandma's voice came back to me like a soft echo. This house is your anchor, baby. When the world gets loud, you'll always have a place to land. But now, there was no place. And the people who took it from me, they'd done it so quietly. Like I'd never mattered. Like love was nothing next to signatures. That night, I sat down to answer emails just to stay distracted. That's when I saw it. An unread message. No subject line. No recognizable sender. Inside was a single attachment. E_Reeves_will_2019. PDF. My breath caught. I stared at the file for at least 5 minutes. My hand hovered above the mouse like I was afraid it would explode. I clicked. It opened instantly, no password, no warning. 1 page. Simple. Clear. Her signature at the bottom. A notary seal. A witness line, Joanne Talbot. Her friend. Her bridge partner. The language was unmistakable. I leave my home at 112 Willow Grove Road to my granddaughter, Amber Reeves, with no stipulations, as she is the one who stood by me, day after day, with loyalty and love. I reread it 5 times before printing 2 copies. The next morning, I drove to Brookwell Assisted Living, where Joanne had moved 2 years earlier after a fall. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. She answered the door in a wheelchair, a quilt folded neatly on her lap. Her face lit up when she saw me. Well, look what the storm blew back, she smiled. I sat beside her, silent for a moment, holding back a dozen questions. Then I finally asked, "Did you witness it?" Her face went still. I did. I thought I imagined it. They said it didn't exist. Joanne's voice didn't shake. Because they wanted you to doubt it. That's what people do when they want to erase someone. They make them question what's real. She reached into a pouch on the side of her chair and pulled out a small USB drive. I made a copy the day she signed it. I knew someone would try something. She placed it in my hand. She meant it for you. Don't let them rewrite it. I don't remember driving home. I just remember the feeling, not anger, not relief, something deeper. Like I had just pulled my own name out of a fire. That night, I backed up the files to 2 cloud drives and printed everything again. The will, the notarization, a photo of Grandma and me on the porch. Her handwriting, still etched into a birthday card, "The house is yours. You earned it." The next morning, an envelope showed up at my door. No return address. Inside, a legal document, neatly typed. A settlement offer. $25,000 in exchange for silence and full surrender of all claims to the property. Signed by my father. No note. No explanation. Just numbers on a page and a deadline, 72 hours. I called my brother Nate. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Did you know about this?" I asked. He was quiet. Then, "Yeah, Dad told me last week." "And you didn't say anything?" I didn't want to get in the middle. "You're already in the middle," I snapped. "You chose to stay quiet." He sighed. "Look, we all got something. I got tuition help. You got time with her. That's not nothing." It took me a moment to realize what he was really saying. Be grateful for the crumbs. Be quiet and take the deal. I hung up. No goodbye. No second thought. Later that night, I opened every document I had. I labeled folders, color-coded dates, built a timeline from diagnosis to death. I copied text messages, voice memos, email threads. I turned my grief into evidence. And then I made one call. Felix Harmon, a friend from college who now practiced family law in Charleston. He didn't ask for backstory. Just said, "Bring what you have." By noon the next day, I was in his office. A modest building between a laundromat and a dentist's office. He flipped through the pages, face unreadable. "You've got a case," he said finally. "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's fraud." I nodded. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" I didn't hesitate. They thought I wouldn't fight. That's their mistake. Felix filed the case 2 days later. Property fraud. Intentional concealment. Improper transfer of assets. We didn't overstate. We didn't make threats. We just attached the will, the witness statement, the timeline, and let the facts do their work. By the end of the week, we had a response. They were filing a counterclaim. Felix called me the minute the papers came in. "They're accusing you of emotional harassment," he said. "Claiming your presence in the neighborhood, your posts, and even your visits are causing them distress." I didn't say anything at first. Then I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "So they take the house, and now I'm the problem?" "They're building a narrative," he said. "You're unstable. You're grieving. You're overreacting. But I'm also right." He paused. "Exactly." We spent the next few days tightening every part of the case. He taught me what to say, what not to say. I practiced repeating one sentence until it didn't tremble in my mouth. This wasn't just property. It was legacy. Meanwhile, something strange started happening. People noticed. I didn't post names. I didn't rant or spill every detail online. But I did make a quiet statement. Silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's complicity. That was all I wrote. One sentence. No hashtags. No tags. It spread faster than I expected. Old neighbors messaged. Former classmates. People from grandma's church group. Some asked questions. Others offered support. A few sent private messages sharing their own stories of inheritance gone wrong, siblings who betrayed them, families who sold history for cash. I didn't respond to all of them. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I just wanted to know I wasn't crazy. One afternoon, I passed by the house. I didn't go in. I didn't step on the lawn. I just stood across the street with my coffee and looked at the windows that used to glow at night with Grandma's lamp. I saw her, Zara, through the glass, pacing with her phone. She spotted me and pulled the curtain. Later that evening, I received an email from her lawyer. Cease and desist. They wanted me to stop lurking near the property, avoid online insinuations, and cease unfounded claims. I forwarded it to Felix. 10 minutes later, he called, amused. "They're nervous." They should be. A week later, the local paper published a lifestyle piece on home transformations. There she was, Zara, standing on my porch with a glass of wine, smiling for the camera like she owned the block. "A forgotten property, given new life," the caption read. She called it a resurrection. I saved the article, printed it, and tucked it into our court folder. A week before the hearing, I visited the house again, this time, not to make a scene. Just to retrieve what little was left of mine. A cedar box, a few old photos, and the quilt Grandma had made the year I turned 10. I didn't go alone. I brought Felix with me. Zara opened the door before I even knocked. Like she'd been waiting. "You can't be here," she said, arms crossed. "I'm not here to argue," I replied. "I just want my things from the attic." Orville appeared behind her. His face was blank. "You were told to stay away." "This is a legal matter now," Felix said, calm as ever. "We're not here to fight. Just to collect personal items. And we'll leave." But they didn't budge. "We'll call the police," Zara snapped. Felix nodded. "Go ahead." And they did. 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. One asked for IDs. The other asked if I had proof I lived there. I was a full-time caregiver for the last 2 years of her life, I explained. I don't have a lease. But I have legal filings pending. And a notarized will. They were polite, but helpless. "We can't mediate this," one said. "Right now, they're listed as the legal occupants." until the court rules otherwise. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. I left without a word, carrying only a small bin I kept in my car and Grandma's Bible. The one I always brought with me in moments like this, not because I was religious, but because it reminded me who I came from. As I walked down the driveway, I saw Mrs. Carter across the street. She stood behind her screen door, leaning on her cane. She didn't speak, but she nodded, slow, deliberate. She saw me. That night, I wrote a letter. Not for them. For the court. I laid out every detail. The will, the timeline, the sale, the manipulation, the erasure. I included Grandma's note. The house is yours. Keep it warm for people who need it. The next morning, I filed it. That same afternoon, I received an email from the court. Subject: petition status. Message: your petition has been accepted. Court date scheduled. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I said out loud, just once, "It begins now." The courthouse was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in energy. Everyone there moved like they'd seen 100 stories like mine, and none of them ended in hugs. Felix met me outside. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't offer a pep talk. Just nodded and handed me a copy of our binder. Stick to the timeline. Speak only to what you know. Don't try to sound strong, just be true. I'd repeated that line for days. It's not just property. It's legacy. But it wasn't enough anymore. It was proof. And we had it. Across the aisle sat Orville and Zara. Her posture was flawless. His was distant, like he didn't recognize the room. Their lawyer looked like someone who played golf with judges. The moment the hearing started, their strategy was obvious. They framed me as unstable. Said I was emotionally attached, resentful, prone to dramatics. He used the term entitled caregiver more than once. I kept still. I didn't blink. When he brought up my social media post, he called it a targeted campaign. Felix didn't flinch. He stood slowly, flipped open our binder, and began with a sentence I'd never forget. "We are not here to debate emotion. We are here to examine facts." He handed the judge the original will. Then the notarized scan. Then the certified witness testimony from Joanne Talbot. Each document had its own weight. When Joanne took the stand, she didn't waver. She described the day of signing, the tea they drank, the moment Grandma's pen skipped as she wrote my name, the way she smiled after. She said, "Now it's where it belongs," Joanne added. And I remember because she meant it. The judge didn't interrupt once. Next came the neighbors. 3 of them. All confirmed the same thing, that I had lived there, maintained the house, cared for Evelyn Reeves through her decline, while Orville and Zara were absent. Then came the moment I didn't see coming. Felix submitted an inspection report dated 3 weeks after the house sale. It showed that Zara had listed the property as vacant and abandoned. On paper, the house was sold as distressed property, an empty shell. The judge raised his eyebrows. "Is this accurate?" he asked. Zara shifted. Her lawyer whispered something quick, but she spoke anyway. Well, it needed work. It looked empty. Felix slid a printed article across the bench. The lifestyle feature. The one where she described the transformation. You claimed in a public interview to have purchased the home from the family and called it well-preserved. The judge looked from the article to the inspection report. Then to Zara. And then, finally, to me. He read the first line of the will aloud. "To my granddaughter Amber Reeves, sole heir of my home at 112 Willow Grove Road." Silence settled. Then he spoke. "I'm granting a temporary injunction. There will be no further renovations, sales, or filings regarding this property until further investigation is completed. Allegations of fraudulent transfer will be reviewed under formal proceedings." Zara gasped. Orville stayed quiet. But just before the judge dismissed us, I heard something, barely a whisper, but enough. From Orville, directed at her, "You didn't love me. You loved what she left." She fired back without hesitation. "You stopped being a man the moment she died." I didn't react. I didn't move. Let them destroy each other. I wasn't part of that anymore. As I stood to leave, the judge looked at me one last time. "We'll reconvene in 30 days for a final determination. But I'll say this, the will is clear. and your conduct in court has been commendable." Outside, Felix exhaled for the first time that day. "You stood taller than half the attorneys I know," he said. But I didn't feel proud. I felt hollow. It wasn't over yet, and even if I won, I wasn't getting a family back. Still, when I drove home that evening, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. I felt steady. The past had been loud. But now, the truth had a voice too. The locksmith arrived just after sunset. He didn't ask questions. Felix had sent the injunction paperwork ahead of time, and the man barely spoke as he drilled through the new lock Zara had installed. 2 clicks. That was it. The door opened. I stepped inside first. Felix waited behind me, respectful, quiet. But I waved him off. "I need a minute." He nodded. Left without another word. It wasn't the same house, not really. I already knew that. But I also knew something else. They hadn't buried everything. Not yet. I walked from room to room in silence, checking for pieces of her, anything that hadn't been thrown away or replaced. In the back closet, I found her spice rack. It still smelled faintly of cloves. In the attic, one of her quilts, half folded in a bin labeled junk. And on a shelf behind the washing machine, a cedar box with my name carved into the lid. They hadn't noticed it. I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside, birthday cards, old photos, and a tiny note I recognized immediately. Her handwriting was faded, but still clear. "You already belong. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just sat there, trying to figure out how much of me had been built in this house, and how much had been torn down trying to get back into it. Later that night, I hung the quilt over the back of the couch and brewed a cup of tea in her old dented kettle. The sound of it boiling made my shoulders drop for the first time in weeks. Not relief. Just quiet. The next morning, I started unpacking what little I'd saved. I washed the pans she used for baking, cleaned the windows she always said were never quite clear, and opened every drawer just to know what had changed. Around noon, I heard footsteps outside. Orville stood at the edge of the yard, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered. He didn't call my name. Just stood there. After a long pause, he said, "I didn't think you'd fight." I didn't move. "You didn't think I'd remember who I am." He nodded once. Turned. Walked away. No apology. No explanation. Just like the man he'd become, quiet when it mattered, distant when it hurt. I went back inside. Reclaiming the house didn't mean fixing everything. It didn't undo the years I gave up, the silence they fed me, the betrayal I had to climb through just to be heard. But it meant no one else could rewrite the ending. The next few days, I kept moving. Cleaned, sorted, repaired. I didn't try to restore the house to what it was. That version was gone. But I brought back what mattered. The rhythm. The feeling. The steadiness. That weekend, a cardboard box showed up on the porch. No note. Inside, my old journals, 2 photo albums, and a pair of earrings I thought I'd lost years ago. Nate. I knew his handwriting on the label. He didn't knock. Didn't text. But he'd done something. Later that evening, I got a message. Simple. Quiet. From him. I didn't know what to do. But I saved what I could. I didn't reply. I just stood in the hallway where Grandma had once carved that sentence into the wood, the one Zara painted over in white. For Amber, who keeps the fire. If I squinted, I could still see it. Faint. Barely there. But enough. The lawsuit wasn't over, but the silence around it was. People had started talking. It wasn't loud or public, not yet, but the story had begun to shift. It showed up in glances across the grocery store, in short nods from people who used to cross the street when they saw me. A few messages arrived in my inbox. Women I didn't know. Some said things like, "My aunt left me her house. My brother sold it behind my back." Others just wrote, "Thank you for saying something." I wasn't trying to be anyone's symbol. I was just trying to breathe. But I understood now this was never just about one house. It was about how easily people could be erased. And how rarely anyone stopped to ask who got left behind. By the end of the week, I made a decision. I opened the door. Not for my family. For strangers. Women from the neighborhood. Friends of friends. A woman I barely knew knocked one afternoon just to ask if she could sit inside for a bit, said she'd driven past the house every Sunday for years when Evelyn was still alive. I made tea. We didn't talk about court, or trauma, or anything that required explanation. We sat in the kitchen like we were supposed to be there. Because we were. Word got around. No flyers. No posts. Just a quiet knowing that this house, the one someone tried to erase me from, was now a space where no one had to explain why they needed to be there. They came in pairs. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with their mothers. Some stayed 5 minutes. Others sat until sunset. They didn't ask what had happened. And I didn't offer it. Because the details didn't matter as much anymore. The point was, we were still here. One afternoon, a woman came in with her teenage daughter. She didn't say why. Just touched the wooden frame of the hallway door and said, "I remember when this was carved." She didn't need to point. I knew what she meant. The line was almost invisible now, covered in 2 coats of generic paint. For Amber, who keeps the fire. Somehow it had survived. That night, I stood in front of it with a flashlight, tracing it with my thumb. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't bold. But it existed. And after everything, existing felt like a victory. The next day, Felix called. "We got a final date," he said. 30 days from now. His tone was flat, but I knew him well enough to hear the edge behind it. This wasn't a normal case anymore. It had layers now. Lies exposed. Confessions caught on public record. The sale, the forged narrative, the attempt to silence me. And now, a counterclaim that had no real teeth. "They're not doing well, are they?" I asked. "They're unraveling. Zara's lawyer tried to settle last week behind Orville's back." I paused. "And?" I said no. Of course he did. "You ready for the next round?" he asked. "I'm past ready." After we hung up, I walked out to the yard and started digging. Grandma had always wanted a rose bush beneath the front window, but never got around to planting one. I dug until the earth turned soft. Until my hands were covered in dirt and something inside me quieted. Not everything had to be a fight. Some things could grow. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Grandma and I used to sort bills and write out grocery lists. I opened an old notebook and wrote a single sentence. "Let the house be more than a courtroom." I didn't know what came next. I wasn't trying to build a brand or start a movement. But I knew one thing. They tried to make this house a transaction. I made it a testimony. Not to what I'd lost, but to what no one could take. The morning of the hearing, I woke before the sun. I didn't rehearse what I'd say. I didn't flip through documents or recheck files. We were ready. Not perfect, but ready. At 9:42 a.m., the case was called. Same room. Same people. But something had shifted. Zara didn't look at me. Orville sat stiff, like he was waiting for this to be over no matter the outcome. Their lawyer had thinned his smile. Even confidence has a shelf life. The judge opened with a summary of our petition, reviewed the preliminary findings, and confirmed that both parties had refused settlement. Then he turned to Felix. "Counselor." Felix stood. No theatrics. No raised voice. "Your Honor, the documents remain unchanged. A signed, notarized will. Dated. Verified. A transfer of property that occurred despite that will, made under false assumptions of ownership, presented to an LLC in another state, without full disclosure to the intended heir. This isn't about bitterness. This is about process. And truth." He handed over a final folder. Inside, bank transfers linked to the holding company, notes from contractors, and digital timestamps from the original inspection, all showing how fast the sale had been pushed through after Evelyn's death. Everything connected. A short, sharp paper trail, dressed to look legitimate, but built on omission. Then came our final witness. Joanne returned. She walked slowly. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. She told me, "I just want Amber to be safe. To have something that no one can take." She said that before signing the will. And she said it again after. The judge asked one question. "Did you see anyone else present?" "Yes." Her son was there. He walked out halfway through. Orville didn't react. Not visibly. Then it was their turn. Zara's lawyer leaned hard into emotion. He claimed miscommunication, family misunderstanding, that the will had appeared late in the process, and complicated matters. He painted me as possessive, sentimental, fixated on a property instead of healing. I stayed quiet, because nothing they said could erase what was written. Then Zara asked to speak. Her lawyer hesitated. The judge allowed it. She stood and said, "I thought I was bringing life into that house. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." It was half an apology, half deflection. She went on about how difficult it was to blend families, how memories cloud logic, how grief turns people into versions of themselves they barely recognize. I didn't respond. The judge thanked her, and then looked at me. "Ms. Reeves, do you wish to speak?" I rose. "Just one sentence. She left me the house because I never left her." He nodded, wrote something down, then closed the folder and spoke. "This court finds the original will valid and binding. The attempted sale of the property occurred without rightful authority and is declared void. Ownership will be legally restored to Amber Reeves, effective immediately." I didn't exhale. Not right away. Because it wasn't just the words. It was everything that hadn't been said. Everything I'd carried in silence. Every time someone told me to move on, to be reasonable, to stay quiet. The ruling continued. He mentioned potential consequences, civil penalties, investigation into the holding company's practices, and possible sanctions for failure to disclose inheritance intent. But I didn't hear most of it. I only heard the last line. "This matter is now closed." When I walked out of that courtroom, the air hit different. Not lighter, but real. Outside, Felix clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it." "No," I said. "We proved it." He smiled. "Same thing." I didn't go home right away. I drove to the cemetery. I stood by her headstone for a long time and said nothing. Just let the silence settle. It didn't need filling. I wasn't there to update her. She already knew. The papers came in the mail 5 days after the ruling. Thick envelope. Court seal. My name printed where someone once said it didn't belong. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post anything online. I didn't throw a party. I just signed. Then I took the deed and tucked it into the drawer beside the will, the USB drive, and Grandma's old reading glasses. Not to forget. Just to put it down. There was nothing left to argue. The house was mine. And now I had to decide what that meant. For a few days, I did nothing but walk. Through the neighborhood, through the garden, down the street to the corner store that still sold the same lemon drops she used to keep in her purse. People nodded. Some said hello. A few avoided my eyes. I didn't need their approval. But the quiet respect, I noticed it. One morning, I found a folded note slipped through the front gate. No name. Just, "Thank you for not letting them erase her." That was it. The sentence stuck with me more than anything the judge said. Because that's what the fight was always about. Not revenge. Not even justice. Memory. The kind that doesn't fade just because someone painted over it. I started making small changes. Not to erase what happened, but to return what mattered. I replanted the hydrangeas she used to trim every spring. Fixed the gate. Repaired the swing. And I kept the door open. Literally. Sunday afternoons became something unspoken. No schedule. No invitation list. Just a rhythm. People came and went. Sat at the kitchen table. Stood in the hallway. One woman brought banana bread without saying why. A teenager asked if she could play piano in the back room, just once. I said yes. Someone left a stack of books on the porch, all with names written on the inside covers. All borrowed, not returned. I started calling it Evelyn's room, even though no one asked. It wasn't a community center. It wasn't a nonprofit. It wasn't a business. It was just a house where no one had to ask for permission to exist. One afternoon, Nate stopped by. He didn't knock. He walked up holding another box, this one smaller than the last. Inside were the earrings she'd given me at 16 and a photo I didn't even remember being taken. Me and Grandma on the porch, barefoot, laughing. The edges were worn, but the moment was clear. "I wasn't brave," he said. "You were scared," I replied. "Most people are." We sat in silence for a while. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said. It didn't go far, I corrected. It went exactly where they pushed it. He nodded. Left the photo. Left the box. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Just returned what never should have been taken. A few weeks later, I received one more envelope. No return address. Just a short note in my father's handwriting, "You won. I hope you're proud." No signature. No apology. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. But because I finally understood some things don't need closure. Some people can only meet you in the past. And I had no plans to live there anymore. Instead, I opened the window and let the spring air in. That night, I pulled out the final quilt. The one without a name stitched into it. Just a simple line, sewn in the bottom corner. For Amber, so she always remembers she belongs. I draped it across the back of the couch. Not as decoration. Not for display. But because I was staying. Not to hold on. But to move forward. A week later, a woman stopped by. She looked unsure at first, hands in her pockets, eyes scanning the porch like it might reject her. "I heard this place is open," she said. "It is," I told her. "No application?" "Nope." She stepped inside. Quiet. Careful. I offered her tea. She asked, "What do you call this?" I didn't have an answer. I just said, "It's a place that stayed standing."